Well, we are in the 23rd session of our review of the book of Genesis. In a sense, we're going to finish the book tonight, except for one chapter. In chapter 49, Jacob will prophesy over the 12 tribes, over his sons. And we're going to hold that back for the final session next time, because that's also a good occasion to not just cover those verses, but to do a more comprehensive review of the 12 tribes, not just historically, but prophetically. So by making that its own session, it makes sense, I think, to use it as a trailer on the whole thing. So we're going to go through the family now is in Egypt, obviously. Jacob is with them. Joseph, last time we had this incredibly dramatic, touching scene where Joseph presents himself to his brothers. And that's a passage you can just read and not fail to be touched by. And of course, as you really embrace the humanity of all involved, that has to be one of the great scenes in history. But at this point, the family is in Egypt. We'll take chapters 46 through 50, holding back 49 for our final session. Now, as I say, we've had 3 sessions on Joseph, 21, 22, and 23. So this is the third of those sessions. And we're going to chapter 46, they'll journey to Egypt. And in 47, Jacob's family will be honored by the Pharaoh and so forth. We have a very important chapter in 48, where Joseph's 2 sons born in Egypt are adopted by his father. We need to understand what that really means. And the final session, 49, we'll hold back, as I say. And then, of course, the last chapter, which closes the book of Genesis, is the death of Jacob and so forth. And so we're in chapter 46, Jacob and journeys to Egypt. Chapter 46, verse 1, and Israel, notice the word there. We call him Jacob most of the time, but you'll notice when the word Israel's there, it's a compliment. And Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac. And God spake unto Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. You know, it's interesting, you girls, you've noticed that you always have to tell a man twice? Did you know that's scriptural? You know, Eli, Eli, you know, and so forth. So it's scriptural. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. Now, he's left Hebron. They lived in Hebron, and his first stop was in Beersheba, which is en route on the way there. And he gives sacrifice, which is his style. It's people talk of his altered life, A-L-T-A-R, altered life. He does altars and so forth. And this is where Isaac had lived and where Jacob left to escape Esau, you may recall. And it's also where Jacob received that vision at night, the Lord at night. And so God is meeting him here for the 7th time, by the way, if you've been counting. It was chapter 28 and a couple of times, 31, 32, 35, twice, and so forth. So he meets with him 7 times. Anyway, God continues, says, I will go down. He's telling him, don't fear to go down to Egypt, because remember, he was told not to before, or his father was also told not to before. I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. So God is reiterating his promise to him that his family would be a great nation, and that he would bring that nation back from Egypt ultimately. And he also, this is comforting, because he's telling you that he's going to die. He's going to die in peace, and his son Joseph will close his eyes. Is really what he's saying here. So in verse 5, Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob their father and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. It's interesting to sense, as we go through this whole thing, the participation, not just of Joseph, naturally, because he's family, but Pharaoh himself. You're going to see all kinds of overt, but also subtle, indications of how Joseph was revered by the Egyptians. Understand, their background was to disdain the Hebrews. The culture was such that they were a despised group. They overcame all of that because of Joseph, and not just in deference to Pharaoh. He really had earned his spurs. He saved the nation and a major part of the world with his stewardship and so forth. So he's very venerated. But it's interesting to be sensed as we go here how Pharaoh himself is participating in helping this family get relocated into Goshen and so forth. And they took their cattle and their goods, by the way, which were substantial, presumably, the ones that survived the famine, their goods, and which they had gotten in the land of Canaan. They came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him. And here's a map to give you a rough idea of where they were in Hebron. And Beersheba is probably, I imagine, about a third of the way and to Goshen. And his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his seed brought he with him into Egypt. And these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt: Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanak, Phalu, Hezron, and Carmi. And the sons of Simeon, Jemuel and Jamin, and Ohad, and Yachin, and Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanitish woman. And the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the sons of Judah, Er and Onan, and Shelah, and Pharez, and Zerah. But Er and Onan died in the land of Canaan. In other words, they're listed here for completeness, but they had passed away by this time. They passed. Remember, that's what Genesis 38 was all about, with the background of Tamar and that sordid business. And the sons of Pharez were Hezron and Hamul. And the sons of Issachar, Tola, and Phuvah, and Job, and Shimron. And the sons of Zebulun, Sared, and Elon, and Yahiel. And these be the sons of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob in Padar Aram, and his daughter Dinah. And all the souls of his sons and his daughters were 33. And the sons of Gad, this is going to be summarized for you in a minute, so you don't have to be counting here. But anyway, the sons of Gad, Ziphion and Haggai, and Shuni, and Esbon, Eri, Arodai, and Areli. And the sons of Asher, Jimnah, and Yeshua, and Izui, and Beriah, and Zerah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malachiel. And these are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she bare unto Jacob, even 16 souls. And the sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. And unto Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, bare unto him. Now these two guys we're going to talk about in the subsequent chapter will be quite significant for lots of reasons. And the sons of Benjamin were Bela and Becher and Ashbel, Gera, and Naaman, Ehi, and Rosh, Mupin, and Hupin, and Ard. Sounds like a musical group, doesn't it? You always see these Christian music groups looking for new names. I wonder if they've overlooked this one. That looks like a dandy. You get a lot about Uz and Buzz. That's in another area. But Muppin and Huppin, I think that sounds like it's got rhythm, man. That's all right. These are the sons of Rachel, which were born to Jacob. All the souls were 14. And the sons of Dan, Hushim. Now, let me mention something here that you won't find in the commentaries, because when you read this, it sounds like Hushim is the son of Dan. And that it may be, but there's another view. The word is a plural, and it's equivalent to our English, and others. One of the mysteries of the biblical text that apparently starts here but goes right through the biblical text, and we'll talk about this next time as we talk about the tribes. You can get the impression, you can draw the inference, that the Holy Spirit has something against Dan. You notice this very conspicuously when you get to the book of Revelation. Because in chapter 7 you have 12 tribes sealed for protection. But if you read that carefully, you'll discover there's a tribe missing. That's why it's so important for you to understand there's really 13 to talk about. But in fact, there's actually 2 tribes missing. Most people miss this. I'll explain why. First of all, the tribe of Dan is conspicuous. That's not mentioned. It's not sealed. It's not protected. It has to survive the tribulation without that protection, apparently, or the leader does. They do survive it because they are the first tribe to inherit when the land is again granted them in the millennium. But that's because he's going from north to south, and they're in the north. The general view is that Dan is not mentioned there because it's the tribe through which idolatry entered the land. And that's, in a sense, of judgment to it. What many people miss, there's another tribe missing too, but it's there by inference, because in the list, Manasseh is mentioned, and then later, Joseph. Well, wait a minute. Joseph is Manasseh and Ephraim put together. If you already got Manasseh, what's left? Ephraim. So Ephraim's there, but not by name, by inference. So you get there again. Dan and Ephraim are the bad guys, idol-worshiping wise, when you get to the northern kingdom and all that business. But when you stand back from the scripture, you'll also notice there's a number of places where the tribes are listed in various, in fact, the 12 tribes are listed 20 times in the Bible. Each time in a different order, each time with a different one missing, and so on and so forth. But when you get to Dan, often there'll be a full genealogy like you have here of all these other guys. When you get to Dan, it's Dan and his guys, and moves on, you know. And if you were Dan, you'd say, wait a minute, guys, I'm not getting a fair shake here. So somehow you get that impression. And anyway, and the sons of Naphtali, Yazil and Guni and Jezer and Shillem. And there are the sons of Bilhah, which Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she bare these unto Jacob. All the souls were 7. Here's a summary of what we just went through to give you a feeling of it, because there's a lot of confusion because of different quotes in different places. And I won't go through all of them here, but you'll find that in Acts 7, Stephen mentions 75 souls, but it's who you're counting and who you're not, see, so it gets complicated. But it's all reconcilable, and obviously Leah and her children and grandchildren were 33, we went through that, and then there's the 16 of Zilpah's and the 14 of Rachel's and the 7 of Bilhah's. They're grouped as you probably want to group them, Leah and her surrogate, and Rachel and her surrogate. Then Dinah, being a gal, is listed separately. And then and Onan are mentioned here for completeness as they are in the text, but they're not counted because they had died before this relocation. Joseph and his 2 sons, however, were already in Egypt, so we take off 5 for those, and that's how we get the 66. Those who went down to Egypt in verse 26 will be 66. But when you count Joseph, Manasseh, Ephraim, and Jacob, that's 4 more. That gives you the 70, because you'll also find places in verse 27, for example, where it says there's 70 went down. And if you're just reading this, you can get confused. Is there 66? Is it 70? Or what is Stephen calling with the 75? So don't let it throw you. It's a question of just doing the diligence, laying it out. Are we together? Not a big deal, but don't want you to stumble on that in your own reading. Let's move on. Here it is, verse 26, 27. All the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins, besides Jacob's sons' wives, all the souls were 66, in other words, 66. The sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were 2 souls, and all the souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70. See, if you're just reading that, it sounds like double talk at first, unless you make the list and realize that some were already there and so forth. That's why I give you the reconciliation, which will be in the notes, the supplemental notes that go with this. Okay. And he sent Judah before him unto Joseph to direct his face unto Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen, which I think, as I mentioned last time, is the eastern portion of the Nile Delta. The most fertile part of the land was where the Nile enters the ocean. There's a very fertile area called the Delta, a very large area. The eastern portion of that is we believe, the district of Ramesses, called that way, called such in the book of Exodus, but it's basically here called Goshen. It's the Pharaoh earmarked this most choice place for Joseph's family to dwell in. And Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Can you imagine this reunion? This reunion. This was his Israel, or Jacob's, favorite son. He and Benjamin were the 2 from Rachel. They had favored treatment. In fact, it was that favored treatment that got Joseph's, incurring the envy of his brothers that led to his being a victim of all that mischief. But now they're together. Can you imagine this father and Joseph? He thought he was dead, and now he discovers he's the ruler of the world. That takes some adjustment, That takes some adjustment. And Israel said to Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. After 22 years, they're united. And see, the last time Joseph saw his father was when he was 17. And so he's not only satisfied to see his son alive, but to see it also, he was the one that was the designated heir. He was